Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Domiko L. Cunningham, better known as Dr. Media. So, what do we have today? I told you that this year we would get into some different things here on the channel. And one of those things would be to build an actual machine. Now, this machine here is a refit. Actually, I built this machine about 2 weeks ago. But I built it in a Silverstone Grenada case. And if you're familiar with that case, it's an HTPC case. Needless to say, that case was pretty bad. The thermals in that case were out of control. There was not enough airflow moving through that case to keep this FM2 chip cool. The chip for this build, and the reason for this build was that I wanted to do another gaming machine upstairs in the bedroom. So I'm going to be doing a rebuild of the gaming machine for the living room later this summer, and I'm also going to be doing a monster build for the editing station. So all of those things being said, this build right here was, like I say, primarily for another 1080p gaming rig upstairs. And I wanted the cost of it to be less than $400. And I know you're thinking, like, how in the world could that be less than $400? Really, my budget was like $425. I think I might have hit $450 with this build, but overall, not a bad price for this build. So what this build consists of, it is a AMD FM2 Plus. It is the X4 860K. So it's the 860K, it's the older FM2. And the reason, and what inspired me to do this build was that chip is a quad core chip. So it's a quad core AMD chip on the FM2 platform, but it's only $64 right now. So that was one thing that really pulled me to it. The next thing that pulled me to it was the Asus motherboard. The Asus motherboard is, I believe it is the 58, it's a micro ATX motherboard. I'll get the right specs for it. I'll have the specs and everything. I have all the parts that I picked down in the description for this video. So went with that, and the motherboard. The motherboard was $48 with a $10 rebate, which made it $38 for the motherboard. And then the cooler, I went with a Corsair H80i version 2, which I actually had laying around, so that didn't cost me anything. I did need a power supply. So the power supply I got was an EVGA 500 watt power supply. It's an 80 watt efficiency, and I believe it is a gold, it's a gold 500 watt. Because this machine and this thing's not gonna pull that much power. The FM2 chip is rated at 95 watts. And then the last thing, the beast or the power of this machine comes from the RX 470 Asus Strix Edition. So I went with the Strix Edition, one, because in my workstation right now, workstation slash gaming machine down in my office, I actually have a R9 380 in that build. It was an Asus Strix card, and I had never used a Strix card before, but I actually like the styling and the thermals that I got off the Strix card. So I wanted to go with the Strix for this. And I'm building this kind of as a last hurrah. This, at least in my mind, this is a last hurrah for the FM2 and the AM3 platform for AMD, because as everyone knows, they have risen, or they are rising from the dead, as it were. So they're rising up. So I'm gonna do a build later in the summer. The gaming build for the living room is going to be a Ryzen based build. Now, I don't know if I'm gonna do a 7 series or a 5 series Ryzen. I kind of want to wait until some things come out, but I can give a little bit of details for the workstation build. The workstation build is going to actually feature 2 of Radeon's WX7100s, and if you're not familiar with that part number, it's because those are their professional grade graphics cards. Those graphics cards, actually, for the Radeons, it is a blue It's really cool. When I get them in, I'll show them off on the channel. They're really cool cards. They're single slot RX 480s. So basically they're retooled RX 480s, but they are certified for a lot of the digital content creation stuff that I do. So as many people know, I do a lot of stuff for VR, I do a lot of stuff in AR, and I also model, and I work in film, and then working with 4K footage is really nothing because, for a very long time, we've been using footage that's actually way bigger than 4K. So now that I'm doing more stuff like that, I wanted to rebuild the monster rig, and it's going to be an Intel and Radeon build. But back to this build. The case that I chose for this, like I said before, I did the Grenada case. It's a cool looking HTPC case, but the thermals on that case are just all screwy. You don't really get good airflow through that case. So this machine was doing really well. It was doing the 470 was easily pushing 60 frames a second in Vulkan on Doom, and it's only hooked up to a 1080p television, and it's an older 1080p LCD panel, which is going to be upgraded this summer as well. I'm going to be upgrading that to a 4K panel in the bedroom and a 4K panel in the living room. So the old 1080p panels are going to go the way of the dinosaur and get retired to other bedrooms. But this machine was doing really well at pushing 1080p 60 frames a second, but the problem that I had is that it was just overheating. It felt like a small radiator in the bedroom, and it was crazy. Even using the Corsair Link software, I would put it on quiet, and probably within 5 minutes of gaming, both fans ramp up, and it sounds like the thing's about to take off. Now, the 470 itself is actually pretty quiet, but the Corsair cooler was just cranking out heat. It was trying to do its best job, and what I ended up finding was that probably the biggest thing is that the Grenada case was just not giving proper airflow to be able to, keep up with what was going on. So anyway, I'm going to go through this build, and it's like I say, it's not a really super fancy build. I'll show you the Strix card if you're interested in it. The reason why I went with this Strix, one of the reasons why I went with this Strix card, it's a Republic of Gaming card from Asus, which kind of everything that they have now is the ROG branding, right? So it's a Republic of Gaming card. It doesn't have a back plate because this is the 470, and if you follow anything about the 470 and 480, you'll realize that the 470 is just kind of an underclocked 480 with some of the stream processors with not as many stream processors, and I don't have the exact number for stream processors right now, but I can get that. I think it's a really nice looking card. The reason why I actually went with this card over just getting a 480 is because, one, I'm probably going to do 480s or whatever Vega chip that AMD does for this next launch, because from what we hear, the new Vega chips are not going to be a refresh. Now, they're supposed to be coming out with AMD 580s and 570s, which I think are supposed to be refreshes of the 470 and 480. But the 470 is a good gaming card, and one of the things that I like about the Strix card is that it has a 4-pin fan connector on the back of the card, so you can hook a system case fan. If you have a 4-pin fan, you can hook that to it, so you can have fan control, and basically the card controls the fan for the case. Or you can just plug in a regular case fan, and when it gets hot enough, and when the card senses that it's getting too hot in the case, it'll actually start that fan up for you. So the fan doesn't run all the time; it only runs when the card feels like the case has gotten too hot and the GPU is getting overheated. Now, the one thing that's really cool about this too is that this Strix is RGB. There's a little Republic of Gaming RGB light here on the side, and that was another reason why I decided to go with the Thermaltake Core V21 is because it has a side panel. This, if you have not seen the Core series from Thermaltake, you really need to check it out. The build we're going to do later this summer is going to be based off one of the Core builds as well. We're probably going to do the bigger Core build, which I think is the 9 or the 8. But these are really just boxes. I know that's hard. I know that's kind of weird to say when you're talking about a computer, but really it's just a box. And you can reconfigure. You can take the front panel off. You can take all the side panels off, and then you can reconfigure it however you want to. Another thing that Thermaltake has started doing is they have their Thermaltake LCS, which is it's certified for liquid cooling. So their new Core cases are certified for liquid cooling. Now, I know that's kind of weird to say, but I think it's very interesting because what they've done is they actually have basically just made a little computer box, and you can kind of configure it how you want to. If you want to put a 280 rad into this, you can. If you want to put two 280 rads in here, you could do that too. You could change the case however you want to. If you don't like the feet being on the bottom, you can turn the window and put the window on top of the case. It's literally just a cube, and you pull everything off of it, and you can do whatever the heck you want with it, which is really cool. So, like I say, I went with the RX 470, and this is the 4 gigabyte edition. But it was doing really well. I just did not like how hot that the CPU was getting and how hot the computer felt like it was getting overall. So I decided to change it out. I decided to change out the case. So all the parts are going to go back in it. Other than that, this thing only had like 8 gigs of RAM in it. It's got 8 gigs of Patriot memory. It's an older kit of DDR3 Patriot because realistically, I'm not going to overclock this. This machine's not going to be overclocked. So some people might even say, well, why are you doing the H80 version 2? Well, I have like 4 of those laying around. Yes, I have like 4 of the 480 of the H80s. So it's just easy to use. I did an AM3 build last year, well, like 2 years ago. It was an AM3 build, and one of the big issues with it was heat. At the time, someone suggested, because of the case I was using, they were like, why don't you go with the H55 from Corsair, which is their kind of quiet and cool liquid cooling, all-in-one liquid cooler. The problem is that the AM3 chip that I has an 8350, so that 8350 was getting so hot, because that's one of the things, AMD for their with their AM2 and AM3 Plus and FM2. Well, most of the newer FM2 chips that are APU chips are a lot more thermally efficient than than some of the other FM2 Plus chips are. But AM3 chips, mostly AMD stuff all around, has kind of been known as like a micro heater. So they're really hot. Well, so what happened was the 8350 basically cooked the H55 to the point where I was playing a game and I was hearing something sizzling, and it was the liquid from the liquid cooler. So I will say, sometimes you think you're doing overkill when you do some of these liquid coolers. You're really not, because some of these chips, especially if you're going to overclock stuff, and that 8350 is overclocked to 4 gigahertz stable. Actually, I think it's at 4.2 gigahertz stable, and it's a Crossfire system. It's actually 2 380s in Crossfire in that machine. So that H80 is not overkill. It really isn't. So it's a double stack radiator with a push and pull fan. And it actually has a built-in suite on the motherboard, which is actually really kind of cool. You can plug it into one of your USB headers, and then you can get readouts directly from the pump motor and right into software in Windows. So I'm going to stop yabbing, and I'm going to get into taking this sucker here out of the box, show you this case, and then we'll start to reassemble this and put this back together. So there you have it. You got the V21, Core 21 from Thermaltake, and we got it all in there, and everything's good. So I'm gonna take this and power it up and do some tests on it, because I just got Andromeda and I got a couple of other titles like Watch Dogs and things like that, and we'll look at what this 470 can do now that it's gonna be properly cooled. Oh, it's properly cooled now. I'll catch you on the next video that we do here on the Phoenix Inception Dr. Media channel. If you like what you saw and you want to see more of that, then you can help us out by hitting that subscribe button. And if you didn't, then leave a not like down there. Tell me what can be improved upon. But if you liked it, leave a like and subscribe. And if you didn't, you know what to do. Hit that other button. Until next time, my digital mutants, I will see you right here. I am Delmico L. Cunningham, better known as Dr. Media.